Hi, and welcome to Lifestyle Management. We're going to look at Chapter 14, Personal Safety, and in particular now we're going to do Part 1. Okay, now accidents, injuries, assaults, and crimes may happen to anyone. No one is immune. Now, I'm sure you're already familiar with that, and if you're not, that's a good thing to be aware of. If we can recognize threats of unintentional or intentional injuries, it is the first step to ensure your personal safety. So each individual has more control of his or her own safety than anyone or anything else in his or her life. So we are personally responsible, and we can be much more aware by being preventative, proactive, because a lot of the things that could occur to us are predictable, especially when we're not being proactive and if we think about what we're involved in. So as you may be aware, living life to the fullest means taking some risks. However, we can take all the steps to stay safe and prevent injuries while still having some risk in our lives. Personal safety also involves being aware of the different legislations, for driver distraction from province to province. Now you'll see that in the section called Safety on the Road, and we'll review that. Recognizing the differences between various heat dangers, including heat cramps, heat stress, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke, and we'll look at that. And lastly, understand the differences between sexual victimization, sexual harassment, and sexual coercion. Now, we'll touch that in Part 2, but I've left a note in Part 2 for you to be aware of how I'm going to handle that. So let's get started in Part 1 of this chapter, tackling staying safe. Staying safe, and we're going to begin with personal safety. Now, personal safety, it's defined as a freedom from fear or worry of physical and psychological harm. Now, this includes our awareness of situations, conditions, or events that are harmful and dangerous to our well-being. So if you're going to be engaging in snowboarding or parachuting or some risky thing, you just don't go willy-nilly jumping into the activity without considering, okay, is this something I can do? Am I skilled enough to do this Black Diamond course? Should I be jumping from plane to plane without a parachute? You get the idea that this is within our control, and being able to be in situations and conditions and events, we can produce some predicting. Now, personal safety does demand an awareness of your environment, an awareness of yourself, your capabilities, your skills, and what you can and cannot do and what you're skilled at, healthy lifestyle choices, the ability to assess danger, vigilance, avoidance, and knowing how to defend yourself. Now, the vigilance and avoidance really just means you don't go into a dark area at night by yourself and not be at least aware that you're in some degree of risk. It doesn't mean an eventual attack. It just means to be aware and then have a plan. What will I do if? Personal injury is the leading cause of death of children and young adults. It's also one of the major causes of short and long-term harm and disability for Canadians of all ages. Now, you can check out the data that you find on page 374, and it's included in table 14.1. So let's move into some specific areas. Safety at home. Now, home, safe home. Well, is that always the case? Because of the amount of time spent at home, so do injuries occur there. Falls are the most common injury requiring medical attention. Falls in your home could include things like walking downstairs and not paying attention and missing a couple of stairs and then overstepping and falling. It could be using a ladder. It could be slips on wet floors. I mean, there's a variety of reasons that falls could happen that can cause injury. Perhaps surprisingly, the third most frequent type of injury that leads to hospitalization in Canada, poisoning. Okay, studies show that medications are the most common substance in all poisonings, and as you might expect, children under the age of 6 make up half of all poisonings. Now, take that little bit in consideration. That's preventable. It goes without saying. However, I'm going to say it anyway. If you have medications in your home, residence, or room, make sure that they are kept in their original containers and locked in a cabinet or a box of some sort, especially if there are children around. It seems simple, and yet half of all household poisonings are for children 6 and under, which means they've gotten a hold of something they shouldn't have, that should have been better safeguarded. Another issue regarding home is fire. Fire causes many injuries resulting from 3 different ingredients: fuel, a heat source, and oxygen. If a fire does start, you might have only 2 to 5 minutes to get out of the building alive. What causes great injuries in fires is people thinking they need to pull out of everything that's of memorable or importance to them. That's not people. So be aware of how limited amount of time you may have to exit, and exit quickly. Please consider purchasing an emergency first aid kit for your room or apartment or house, and a fire extinguisher. If you're renting, there should already be one there. That's part of the expectations, and I don't know if it's actually law. I should have checked that before making some point about that. When I rented my house, I made sure that there was 2 fire extinguishers, one in the kitchen, actually 3, one in the kitchen, one in the living room, and one downstairs. Okay, safety on campus. Now, we could be arguing, or not arguing, but pointing out we're on a small campus. It doesn't really affect us very much, and that might be so. But the incidence of risks of in post-secondary campuses in Canada or the United States exists. Common concerns are the residences and vehicle break-ins, poor lighting, lack of proper signage and emergency telephones, fire safety issues, bullying threats, sexual violence, and food safety. All right, so let's explore a wee bit. Some of the effective strategies that have been put into place to build safer campus environments include safe walk programs, campus escort services, campus security patrols, emergency planning programs such as the ones that we have, lockdown procedures and fire drill procedures. Law enforcement post-secondary schools, this is including Georgian College, have set up early warning systems to be used in emergency situations in which a text message is sent to a cell phone and should there be a crisis on campus. You can find that, I've put it on the slide there, and you can find this on our website. Safety in the workplace. It's another place we spend a lot of time, and there are 3 basic factors that support a safe work environment. 1 is the environmental factors, 2 is the personal resources, and 3 are health practices. Now, if you check in your textbook, you'll find more detail on those 3 points. So stay safe on the job demands that we follow safety procedures and when performing tasks. My workplace is the college, so when we have fire drills and lockdown drills, I participate in those. And it's, you just make sure that you treat your workplace as a safe environment. We have a health and safety committee that does regular tours to ensure that the place is safe. If there's a ceramic tile that has been broken, then there's an attempt to try to correct that, because it could be a walking hazard for some people. At the workplace, wear protective equipment when it's necessary. Learn how to identify hazards. Participate in safety training and workshops and courses, and learn what to do when an accident does occur. Again, see, this is preventable and predictable. A lot of things that could happen for us as injuries, unintentionally or intentionally, can occur, and that we don't think they'll happen for us. That's a faulty thinking practice. That they may happen allows us to be more preventable. Now, one of the areas that we spend a lot of time in and gets a lot of attention in media is safety on the road. Now, deaths and injury resulting from traffic collisions continue to be a major transportation safety problem in Canada. Responsibility for road safety is shared between the federal and provincial territorial levels of government. Municipalities are becoming involved in road safety through police services and injury prevention efforts. Now, Canadians need to adopt safe driving habits. And let's look at some of these sort of components involved in safe driving habits. The vision of Canada's Road Safety Strategy 2015 is to have the safest roads in the world. Now, that's been a driving force for some time in Canada, and it's continuing on through to 2025. The primary causes of collisions include impaired driving, speed, aggressive driving, occupant protection, and environmental factors. Now, we'll touch on some of these factors in a minute. And so chances are we can identify we've either seen or have been an impaired driver. We have either seen or have been speeders or aggressive driving. We know about the weather in our area, that snow can be a huge issue. So we need to be very vigilant and be aware of the safety practices. Basic precautions can greatly increase our odds of reaching our destination alive. Vehicles are equipped with seat belts. Use them. They have airbags, padded dashboards, safety glass windows, a steel frame, and side impact beams all help to protect against injuries or death. The size and weight of the vehicle also certainly matter. But these don't necessarily guarantee that we'll arrive safely. That's partly our responsibility. So let's look at some of the safety and some of the risk issues. Airbags, what I mentioned just a minute ago. Airbags supplement the protection provided by using seatbelts. They are connected to sensors that detect sudden deceleration. Children or people with small stature are vulnerable. Children under the age of 12 should be seated in the back of a vehicle and that has airbags installed. Now, airbag systems of the future are already being developed, and they're known as smart airbags. They'll possess some sort of two-level activation. We'll see more about that as it emerges in our car systems. Now, one that I'm sure you're very familiar with because you've been through programs through high school, even in public school, is drugs and alcohol. Although there have been downward trends in the rates of impaired driving incidences over the past 20 years, alcohol is still a contributing factor in road fatalities. Male drivers account for the majority of fatal injuries who had been drinking. Age matters as a difference as well, with the highest percentage of drivers who were fatally injured being those between the ages of 26 and 35 years of age. There were 4.2% of Canadian drivers who reported driving when they thought they were impaired. That is a number of reported. It's not including those that didn't say that they did. And so when we see that number, it's great. People are acknowledging that that's what they're doing, but then they should be pulling back and not doing. A study of full-time college students revealed that 20% drove after drinking some amount of alcohol, and 10% drove after 5 or more drinks. Now, one of the things I remember doing in class quite a bit when we talked about this with police foundations and with other students that I was teaching, I would ask people to raise their hands. How many here agree or would, in fact, drink and drive? And of course, people wouldn't acknowledge they did, or they wouldn't. So they raised a hand saying, you know, I wouldn't. And then I would ask the question, how many of you have drank one beer and then drove? And hands would go up. It just is a reminder that even one alcohol drink clouds our vision, or even the thought that, well, I'm a big guy, one beer won't affect me. It's not until it doesn't, or it's not until it does, I guess, that we don't realize that alcohol and drugs can affect the way that we drive a motor vehicle today. A growing movement of young people, as you are aware, MAD, Parkland Youth in Canada, Students Against Impaired Driving, are doing a lot to educate students about the consequences of drinking and driving. And so talking about it, engaging one another about the importance, designating one as a designated driver. I've been a designated driver for over 25 years. I will gladly not drink if driving my friends home will make that difference. And I've done that for years. And I'm happy to. My friends are still alive as a result of that. And it's not to say they aren't drinking other times and driving, but I'm just saying, be responsible, step up. All right? Okay, let's carry on. So what we need to consider when we look at some of the other issues, let's look at it's much less known, but the impact of drugs. And we're going to probably see more clearly in the next, well, the legalization of marijuana in Canada was supposed to happen in July. It's now looking like perhaps August. So that's going to be something that we're going to see more about what kind of impact there is on traffic accidents. Although there is an impact of drugs in traffic accidents, there is more we don't know about this, but this summer we're going to. In 2012, 40% of Canadian drivers who were fatally injured tested for drugs were found to be a positive for drugs. Now we'll probably learn more about what kinds of strategies we'll be able to use to test somebody for drug use while driving. The Criminal Code of Canada permits police to lay charges of impaired driving if they believe the person's ability to operate the vehicle has been impaired by either alcohol or drugs. For alcohol, you're probably familiar, a 0.08 blood alcohol level is too much. There is not a test currently for specific drugs. However, some form of measure will be available before marijuana is legalized. Now, another more current and up-to-date, newer safety issue is, of course, cell phones and distracted driving. Cell phones have been cited as a major contributing factor to motor vehicle accidents. Drivers using cell phones while driving are 3 to 4 times more likely to be in a car crash than drivers who are focused on the road. If you text and drive, you're more than 23 times more likely to have a collision than drivers who don't text and drive. The reason is, it's really basic physics, really. The reason is that texting a message takes your eyes off the road for about an average of 4.6 seconds. Now, out of 4.6 seconds out of a 6-second interval, that's about the length of a football field. That's huge. That's 100 meters, 100 yards. Lots can happen. If your head is down and your eyes are away for a length of a football field on the highway, it's not a surprise that the incidence of distracted driving accidents is way up. Okay, lots can happen, and we all have likely seen or experienced either accidents or near accidents involving the use of texting or talking on a cell phone or driving. 2 years ago, I guess longer than that, 4 years ago, when I was still teaching one in-class class, the student who followed me out of Georgian College to drive over to Tim Hortons at the set of lights by the residence there, I was stopped waiting and I could see this truck actually coming from behind me, and it didn't look like it was slowing down. And I had noticed as we drove out of Georgian that she had been texting while she was driving. I braced myself for her to crash into me because I expected it was going to happen. And she braked suddenly and screeched to a halt. Now, I gave her a look, and as I drove, I noticed she had vanity plates on and it had her name. She was a student of mine. So I did go talk to her after to say, look, you almost hit the back end of my car and you were on your phone. Please stop texting and driving. College students report that 21% of the accidents or near accidents that they have experienced involved at least one driver using a cell phone. That's 1 in 5 students have reported that. And like I've said before, that's only the reported number. Many provinces have put legislation in place either banning or limiting the use of a variety of handheld devices. Now you'll find on page 382, Table 14.2, and page 384, Table 14.3, for the current legislation regarding distracted driving and fines. And I put them beside me there, but they're in your textbook. Seatbelts. Young males ages 18 to 24 are the least likely to wear seatbelts, as well as young drivers who drive late at night, and those who have passengers who are under the age 29 years of age, or passengers who have been drinking. These individuals tend not to be wearing seatbelts. National collision data revealed that approximately 60% of all fatal injured occupants and almost 29.5% of those seriously injured were not wearing seatbelts at the time of the collision. I know there's an old school belief that by not wearing a seatbelt, if you're ever in a collision, you'll jettison out of the vehicle away from any injury. That's just not the case. When lap shoulder belts are used properly, they reduce the risk of fatal injuries to front seat passengers by 45%, and the risk of moderate to critical injury by 50%. Wear your seatbelts. It's important. The way I look at it, and I did when I had my child, if I wouldn't put my child into a car with a seatbelt or protective, why would I be going without one? Because I could leave her without a father. Wear your seatbelts. Another one close to my heart, cycling safety. About 7,500 cyclists are injured each year in Canada. Most injuries suffered by bicyclists are fractures, dislocations, and other non-threatening injuries. Head injuries are the most dangerous that can be largely prevented by wearing a helmet. Now, it depends on how hard you've hit as to how much that helmet will help. But certainly getting certified helmets is better than just buying any old helmet. It might cost you a bit more to get a good helmet. Get a good helmet. Alcohol use is another factor for cycling injuries and fatalities. If you're going to ride a bicycle for sport or commuting, use road smarts. That's the aisles that they give you. Obey the rules of the road. You go with the traffic, don't go into the traffic. Equip your bike with a horn and lights, particularly if you're going to be at night. Fit your bike correctly. And what that means is don't get a bike that's too big for you, that you can barely reach the pedals, nor too small for you where you can't extend your legs particularly well to get a good rotation on your cycling. And keep your bike well maintained. These are all going to help with safety. Okay, safety and recreational activities. Sport and recreational activities. Again, keep in mind that injuries regarding recreation are preventable and even in some cases predictable. We'll look at a variety of recreational activities and need to regularly keep in mind safety equipment and the environmental issues to be proactive in protecting ourselves and to be able to enjoy the activities for life, not risk our lives. If you're going to participate in outdoor sports, field trips, think ahead, manage your risks. In 2010 to 2011, nearly 1/3 of serious head injuries occurred while skiing or snowboarding. Now, not everybody's going to fall and do damage. However, wear protective equipment, including specifically designed helmets that can reduce severity and the risk of fatal injuries. Snowmobiling leads to more serious injuries than any other sport. And injuries and deaths from snowmobile accidents in North America are on the rise. Now, they're on the rise partly because more people are engaged in snowmobiling. It's a fun activity. And there's lots and lots of trails, but it doesn't mean it's a speedway. And I've had 2 friends who have died on snowmobiles from going too fast and not being able to evade an obstacle. Boating is another great sport. I've done a lot of boating, canoeing, kayaking, motorboating. It's the #1 cause of drowning in Canada. It's not too surprising, although swimming you'd think might be up there. Wear a life jacket. There is a huge program to encourage people. Wear a life jacket or personal flotation device if you boat. Plain and simple. Since 2002, all operators of personal watercrafts must have proof of competency. Good. It would appear obvious. However, it's also important to remember that driving a boat under the influence of alcohol or drugs is a criminal offense. It hadn't always been, but it is certainly today. So you've had an injury, or you're engaged in a sporting activity and it's in the summer and it's hot, so handling the heat. An important non-impact based risk we need to consider here in Canada is heat. Heat cramps are caused by hard work and heavy sweating in the heat. See table 14.4, I think I've got it here beside me. Heat stress can occur simultaneously or afterward as blood vessels try to keep body temperatures down. Heat exhaustion is the result of prolonged sweating with inadequate fluid replacement. If you're doing activities, particularly when I go on runs, anything over 5 miles, I'm bringing water with me and I'm bringing electrolytes. On my long runs, I'll go 18, 20 kilometers on a long run. I bring 4 water bottles. 2 of them have electrolytes, 2 of them are just plain water. I am not going to be short on, be out there somewhere 18 kilometers out and have heat exhaustion. It's hard to recover from that. Heat stroke is a life-threatening medical emergency caused by the breakdown of the body's mechanisms for cooling. So it's important that we manage heat. It's not that you can't go out in the heat and enjoy it. You should. It's good for you. Get the vitamin D. Okay, and the other alternative when living in Canada is coping with the cold. Heat isn't the only issue to prepare and cope with in Canada. We also get to enjoy the cold. With cold comes some risks. The tips of the toes, fingers, ears, nose, chin, and cheeks are the most vulnerable to exposure in high wind speeds and low temperatures, which it can result in what's known as frostnip. Now, frostnip's not nearly as significant or severe as the more severe form of what's affected by cold, which is frostbite, which can either superficially or be very deep. The example beside me is very deep. Superficial frostbite, the freezing of the skin and the tissues just below the skin is characterized by a waxy look and firmness of the skin, although the tissue below is soft. Deep frostbite, that's the freezing of the skin, the muscles, even the bone, and it requires medical treatment. Now, when the body temperature falls below 35 degrees centigrade, that's about 95 degrees Fahrenheit, the body is incapable of rewarming itself because of the breakdown of the internal systems that require that regulate its temperature. This state is known as hypothermia. Hypothermia requires emergency medical attention. Try to keep the victim warm. Do not give them alcohol. Okay, this has been part 1. Please check out part 2 of this chapter, where we're going to look at unintentional accidents and intentional injuries due to living in a dangerous world. I hope this has been helpful. Please take time to consider some of those safety issues and make them a part of your life so that you don't risk your life, but you can enjoy living your life. Thank you. Bye now.